I will never forget the day I heard my father's voice tremble as he signed the papers that sold me, his own daughter, for $20,000. His hands were shaking, but he still pressed that pen down like the money mattered more than my life. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and old carpet, and I sat there frozen, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. $20,000, and she's yours, he said. I wanted to scream, but the words got stuck in my throat. My legs felt like stone. My own father had betrayed me, and there was nothing I could do but sit and watch my childhood vanish for a stack of money I would never touch. And that was the moment my world cracked wide open. But wait, before I take you deeper into that terrible night, let me slow down and tell you who I am. My name is Emily. I'm 16 years old and I live in a small town in the southern part of the United States, a place where everybody knows everybody's business, and secrets don't stay secrets for long. Before I go further, I want to welcome you here. If you're listening to my story, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming chapters. And tell me in the comments, what part of the country are you watching from? I love to know where my listeners are tuning in from. Alright, let's rewind, because a betrayal like mine doesn't just happen overnight. It starts with little cracks in the wall that you don't notice until the whole house falls down. When I was little, my father was my hero. He was tall, loud, and could make me laugh so hard my stomach hurt. He'd toss me up in the air when I was 5, catch me in his arms and say, "You're my little girl, Em. Don't you ever forget that." And I never did, at least not then. But heroes can fall. And sometimes they fall so hard they drag you down with them. The first low point came when I was about 8. My father lost his job at the steel plant. First, he acted like it was no big deal. He told my mother, "Don't worry, I'll find something better." But weeks turned into months, and the bills piled up on the kitchen counter like a mountain no one wanted to climb. Our family dinners grew quieter. My mother would stare at her plate without eating much, and my father's voice grew sharper, angrier. One night, I heard them arguing in the living room while I was supposed to be asleep. "You can't keep drinking all the money away, John." My mother's voice shook. "Don't you dare tell me what to do in my own house," he roared back. I buried my head under the blanket, pretending I didn't hear. But the truth was sinking in. My hero was changing, and I didn't know why. Not long after, the first extreme event struck. One summer afternoon, my father didn't come home for 2 whole days. When he finally stumbled through the door, his shirt was torn, his face bruised, and his breath reeked of alcohol. My mother rushed to him, horrified. "What happened to you?" she cried. "Just a fight." "Don't ask questions," he muttered, throwing himself on the couch. That was the day I first realized my father had secrets. Dangerous ones. As the years went by, the highs and lows of my life grew sharper. There were still good days, like when he took me fishing at the creek and told me stories about when he was a boy. Those were the moments that fooled me into thinking everything was fine. But the lows, oh, the lows cut deeper. By the time I was 12, I noticed strangers coming by the house late at night. Men I didn't know, slipping envelopes into my father's hands. I heard whispers of words like debt and payback. My stomach would knot up whenever those men appeared, because I could see the fear in my mother's eyes. Then came another blow. When I turned 14, my mother left. She said she couldn't take the lies, the shouting, and the secrets anymore. She kissed me on the forehead, her tears wetting my hair, and whispered, "I'll come back for you, Emily. I promise." But she never did. And that left me alone with my father. Alone with a man whose desperation was eating him alive. Still, I held on to hope. I told myself he'd get better. He'd find his way back to being the man who used to lift me up in the air and call me his little girl. I wanted to believe that so badly, because the truth was too painful to face. But hope can blind you. And it blinded me right up until the night he sold me. It was a Saturday evening when my father told me we were going to meet someone important. He told me to wear my nicest dress, the blue one with the little white flowers. I thought maybe he was finally turning his life around. Maybe he had found a new job or was introducing me to someone who could help. We drove to a rundown motel on the edge of town. My stomach twisted as soon as I saw the flickering neon sign and the broken windows. Inside, the hallways smelled like mildew and bad choices. My father kept a firm grip on my shoulder as we walked to room 23. When the door opened, a man in a suit greeted us with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. On the table behind him sat a briefcase. And then it happened, the words that shattered me. $20,000 and she's yours. The man in the suit opened the briefcase, and I saw stacks of money, more money than I'd ever seen in my life. My father's hand shook as he reached for the pen on the table. That's when I realized I wasn't just his daughter anymore. I was his way out. My throat closed up. My chest burned. I wanted to scream, to run, to throw the money back in the man's face. But my body betrayed me. I sat there frozen, too shocked to move, too terrified to understand what was happening. And just as my father pressed the pen to the paper, the motel door burst open with a sound like thunder. I gasped, my heart jumping into my throat, because standing in the doorway was someone I never expected to see again. The door slammed against the wall so hard the frame cracked. I jumped in my seat, my eyes snapping to the doorway. My father dropped the pen, his face going pale. And there she was. My mother. The woman who had walked out of our lives 2 years ago was standing there, chest heaving, her eyes blazing like fire. Her hair was messy, her clothes rumpled, but her presence filled the room like a storm. "Emily," she cried, her voice breaking. I couldn't move. My heart was torn in two. Half of me wanted to run into her arms. The other half was too stunned to believe she was real. "What are you doing here?" My father snarled, trying to sound brave, though his voice cracked. "I could ask you the same thing, John," she shot back. Her eyes flicked to the briefcase on the table, then to me, and I saw the horror sink into her face. "You're selling your daughter? For money?" The man in the suit groaned in irritation, snapping the briefcase shut. "I don't have time for family drama. John, either you finish this deal now, or I walk out and you don't get a dime." My father's jaw clenched. He looked from me, to my mother, to the suitcase, and I saw the war raging inside him. Money or family, freedom or shame. But the worst part? For a moment, I could see him leaning toward the money. "Dad!" My voice was barely a whisper, but it cracked something inside me. "Please don't do this." The silence stretched. My mother was trembling, her fists clenched. The man in the suit tapped his watch impatiently. Then, my father reached for the pen again. "John, don't you dare!" My mother screamed, lunging toward him. In an instant, chaos exploded. My mother shoved the table, the briefcase toppled to the floor, and bundles of cash spilled everywhere. The man in the suit cursed and dove for the money, and my father grabbed my mother's arm to stop her. I sat frozen in my chair, tears blinding my eyes, my body screaming at me to move. But where could I go? My legs wouldn't listen. "Emily, run!" My mother shouted through the struggle. Her words jolted through me like lightning. My chair clattered backward as I shot to my feet. My heart pounded so loud it drowned everything else out. The hallway was right there. Freedom was only a few steps away. But as I reached for the door, a hand clamped down on my wrist like a vice. It was my father. His eyes burned into mine, wild and desperate. "You're not going anywhere." And in that single moment, I realized the man holding me wasn't my father anymore. He was a stranger, someone who valued money more than blood. The man in the suit was stuffing money back into the briefcase. My mother was screaming, clawing at my father's arm. The motel room had become a battlefield, and I was the prize. His grip dug into my wrist so hard I thought my bones might snap. My father's face was twisted, his teeth clenched, and his eyes wide like a cornered animal. I had never seen him look that way before. "You're staying right here," he hissed. "Let her go," my mother shouted, pulling at his arm with all her strength. But my father shoved her back so hard she stumbled into the wall, her shoulder hitting with a sickening thud. The man in the suit stood in the middle of it all, arms full of loose bills, glaring at us like we were wasting his precious time. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "John, control your family or I walk." For a second I thought maybe walking was the best thing. If he left, maybe the deal would fall apart. But then I saw the way my father looked at that briefcase. His jaw was tight, his breath fast. He wasn't about to let $20,000 slip away. "Dad, please." My voice cracked as tears burned my eyes. "It's me. I'm your daughter. Don't do this." His grip loosened just slightly, and for a heartbeat I thought I'd reached him. I thought maybe the man I used to call my hero was still in there somewhere. But then he pulled me closer, his face inches from mine. His voice was low, broken but cold. "You don't understand, Emily. I don't have a choice. They'll kill me if I don't pay them back." My stomach dropped. That's when it clicked. All those late-night visitors. The bruises. The whispers about debt. My father wasn't just drinking his life away. He owed people money. Dangerous people. And I was his way out. "John," my mother screamed again, her voice raw. "You can't fix your mistakes by destroying your own child." The man in the suit slammed the briefcase shut, snapping both clasps. "Enough," he barked. "You either give her to me now, or I take back the money, and your debt collectors come looking for you. And trust me, John, you won't like how they collect." The words made the air in the room heavier. My father's hand trembled against my wrist. He was caught in a trap, one he'd walked into himself, and now he was dragging me down with him. But before anyone could move, the sound of sirens pierced the night. Blue and red lights flashed through the thin curtains of the motel window. Tires screeched outside, and heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. My father's eyes widened in panic. "No, no, not now," he shouted. The man in the suit cursed under his breath, snapping the briefcase closed tighter. "You called the cops?" he hissed at my father. "I didn't," my father barked back. His eyes darted to my mother. "You did, you." My mother didn't answer. She just glared at him, a flicker of defiance in her eyes that made me think maybe, just maybe, she had been the one who tipped them off. The footsteps grew closer. Shouts echoed through the hallway. "Police! Open up!" My heart pounded so fast I thought it might burst. This was it, my chance. I yanked my arm with everything I had. My father stumbled, caught off guard, and for the first time in what felt like forever, his grip slipped. I bolted toward the door. But before I could touch the handle, the man in the suit grabbed me by the shoulder. His fingers dug in like claws, spinning me around to face him. His face was twisted with rage. "You're not going anywhere, girl." Terror froze me in place. He was stronger than my father, more dangerous, and the look in his eyes told me he wasn't afraid of the police at all. Behind us, fists pounded against the door. "Police! Open this door now." My father was yelling, my mother screaming, and the man in the suit dragging me back toward the table. The room spun, the chaos swallowing me whole. I felt like a rag doll being pulled from every side. Then, in a blur, the motel door burst open, splintering off its hinges. Uniformed officers stormed inside, weapons raised. "Hands where we can see them," one shouted. The man in the suit shoved me forward, using me like a shield. "Stay back," he snarled. My body slammed against his chest, his arm like iron across my neck. I gasped, struggling for air, my heart racing. The officers froze, their guns still raised but their eyes flicking nervously between me and him. "Put the girl down," one officer ordered. My father stood frozen near the table, his face white as chalk. My mother was pressed against the wall, tears streaming down her face, whispering my name over and over again. The man in the suit leaned down, his breath hot against my ear. "Looks like your father isn't the only one with debts to pay, sweetheart," he hissed. "And you're worth more than 20,000 to the right people." I shivered, my blood running cold. The room was on the edge of explosion. One wrong move, and everything would come crashing down. And then, out of nowhere, my father lunged. He tackled the man from behind, knocking us both to the floor. I screamed as I hit the carpet, the air punched out of my lungs. The officers rushed forward, chaos erupting again. Hands grabbed me, pulling me away. My mother's arms wrapped around me, shielding me, as shouts and scuffles filled the room. The man in the suit was fighting, my father yelling, the officers shouting orders I couldn't understand. And then, a gunshot split the air. The sound was deafening, echoing in my ears. Everything froze. My breath caught in my throat. The whole room went silent except for the ringing in my head. I turned trembling, my mother clutching me tight. On the floor lay my father. His chest heaved once, twice, his hand reaching weakly toward me. His eyes met mine, filled not with anger or greed, but something else. Regret. "Emily," he whispered. And then his hand fell limp. The man in the suit was pinned under two officers, his face pressed into the carpet, cursing and spitting. The briefcase lay open on the floor, bills scattered everywhere like fallen leaves. But I couldn't look at any of it. All I could see was my father's body, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. His betrayal forever burned into my memory. My knees buckled and my mother pulled me tighter, whispering, "Don't look, Emily. Don't look." But it was too late. Because that was the image that would haunt me forever. The man who was once my hero, now lying lifeless in a dirty motel room. $20,000 scattered around him, the price of my freedom. And just when I thought the nightmare was over, one of the officers turned to my mother with a grave expression. "Ma'am, you and your daughter need to come with us. There's more to this than you realize." The officer's words cut through the chaos like a blade. My mother tightened her arms around me, her whole body trembling. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice sharp but shaking. The officer glanced down at my father's lifeless body, then at the man in the suit still pinned to the floor. His jaw was tight, his eyes heavy with something that looked like pity. This wasn't just about debt. Your husband was tied up in something bigger, something that doesn't end here tonight. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Bigger? How could anything be bigger than being sold like property in a motel room? The officer motioned toward the door. "We need to get you both out of here now. It's not safe." My mother nodded quickly, pulling me to my feet. My legs wobbled, my throat dry. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. What did they mean? What was happening? What would happen to us now? But no words came out. As we stepped into the hallway, the flashing blue and red lights washed over us. The air outside was damp and cool, carrying the scent of rain. I gulped it in like it was the first real breath I'd taken all night. Reporters and onlookers crowded beyond the police tape, their voices buzzing like angry bees. Cameras flashed. Strangers shouted questions. "Who's the girl? Was there a shooting? What happened in there?" I buried my face against my mother's shoulder, wishing I could disappear. The officer guided us into the back of a police car. His voice firm but low. "We're taking you to the station. You'll be safer there until we sort this out." As the car doors shut and the engine rumbled to life, I glanced back one last time at the motel. The broken door. The flickering neon sign. The swarm of officers dragging the man in the suit away. And somewhere inside, my father's body lying still on the floor. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't look away. Because as much as I hated him in that moment, he was still my father. And part of me couldn't help but wonder if he had died trying to save me, or if he had only been trying to save himself. The car pulled away, and with it, the life I thought I knew vanished in the rearview mirror. But little did I know the nightmare wasn't over. It was only beginning. The ride to the police station felt endless, though in reality it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. My forehead leaned against the cool glass of the backseat window, the flashing blue and red lights reflecting in my eyes. My mother sat stiff beside me, silent, her hands clenched so tight in her lap that her knuckles turned white. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? My father was dead. The man in the suit had been arrested. And yet the officer's words kept echoing in my mind. This doesn't end here. The station was buzzing when we arrived.
Phones rang.
Officers hurried back and forth, carrying files, radios crackling with half-heard codes. The air smelled of coffee and printer ink, a strange mix that made me feel both safe and uneasy. They led us into a small room with a metal table and 2 chairs. The walls were bare, painted a dull gray that made me shiver. My mother pulled me close to her side, whispering, "It's going to be all right," but her voice cracked at the end. Minutes later, a tall man in a dark suit stepped inside. His hair was slicked back, his eyes sharp, and though he wasn't wearing a uniform, the badge clipped to his belt made it clear. He was someone important. He closed the door gently behind him and sat across from us. "Mrs. Carter, Emily," he began, his voice calm but serious. "My name is Agent Miller. I work with a federal task force investigating organized crime. And I'm afraid you've been caught in the middle of something much larger than you realize." My mother stiffened. "Organized crime? What does that have to do with my husband?" Agent Miller folded his hands on the table. "Your husband wasn't just in debt. He was tied to a group we've been tracking for years, a network that deals in drugs, money laundering, And, he hesitated, glancing at me. Human trafficking. The words slammed into me like a punch. My breath caught, and my stomach twisted. Human trafficking. That was what the man in the suit had meant when he said I was worth more than 20,000 to the right people. My mother gasped, clutching me tighter. You're saying he was going to? Yes, Agent Miller said quietly. We believe he intended to hand your daughter over as payment for his debts. The man in the suit we arrested tonight is one of their brokers. And unfortunately, his arrest means others in the network will soon know who Emily is. My skin prickled all over. My father was gone, but his choices had painted a target on my back. Then what do we do? My mother demanded. How do I keep her safe? Agent Miller leaned forward, his eyes serious. For now, you both will be placed under protective custody. We'll move you to a secure location until we can dismantle more of this network. But you need to understand, this won't be easy. These people don't let go of what they think belongs to them. His words made me want to crawl out of my own skin. I wasn't a thing. I wasn't property. But to them I was a price tag. Tears burned my eyes as I whispered. Why me? Why did he have to do this to me? My mother stroked my hair, her own tears spilling silently. Because he lost his way, baby. He let greed and fear blind him. That's why you have to remember. Family isn't just blood. Family is who protects you, who chooses you. And I will never let them take you. Her words warmed me for a second, like a candle in the dark. But deep down fear still gnawed at me. Because if my father, my own flesh and blood, could betray me, how could I trust anyone else? The door opened again and another officer stepped in. Sir, the suspect's demanding to talk. Says he won't say a word unless the girl's here. My blood ran cold. Agent Miller's eyes narrowed. He wants Emily? Absolutely not. But the officer shook his head. He claims he won't cooperate otherwise. Says he's got information that could save her life. The room fell silent. My heart pounded against my ribs. My mother immediately shook her head. No, absolutely not. She's been through enough. But a horrible curiosity clawed at me. What if he really did know something? What if refusing to hear him meant I'd never be safe? I found my voice shaky but firm. I'll do it. Both my mother and Agent Miller turned to me in shock. No, Emily, my mother whispered, clutching my hand. You don't have to do this. But I lifted my chin even though my body trembled. If he knows something that could stop them, I need to hear it. Agent Miller studied me for a long moment, his eyes sharp, then finally sighed. If we allow this, it will be under strict supervision. You won't be left alone with him, not even for a second. Do you understand? I nodded even though every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. A few minutes later, they led us down a narrow hallway toward the holding cells. My footsteps echoed on the cold concrete floor. My mother walked beside me, her arm wrapped around my shoulders, while Agent Miller strode ahead, his presence a shield. When we reached the cell, the man in the suit was sitting on a bench, his face bruised but his eyes still sharp, calculating. He looked up as we approached, and a slow, chilling smile spread across his lips. Well, well, he drawled. If it isn't the princess herself. I froze, every muscle locking in place. His gaze slid over me like a snake, and I felt sick to my stomach. Agent Miller stepped between us, his voice firm. You said you had information. Talk. The man leaned back casually, crossing his arms. Oh, I'll talk. But only to her. He nodded at me, his smile widening. After all, she's the one this is really about. My breath caught in my throat. My mother's grip on me tightened painfully. And in that moment I realized whatever he was about to say could change everything. The cell smelled of sweat and rust, the air heavy and suffocating. My mother's nails dug into my arm like she could anchor me in place, but my eyes were fixed on him, the man in the suit. Even behind bars he looked too calm, too sure of himself. Agent Miller's jaw was tight. You've got 30 seconds. Say what you came to say. The man smirked, ignoring him completely, his gaze locked on me. You think tonight was the end, sweetheart? It was just the beginning. Your father wasn't paying off his debt. He was paying off yours. The words hit me like ice water. Mine. I whispered. He chuckled, shaking his head. Oh, you didn't know? Poor girl. Your father promised you long ago. You weren't sold tonight, you were already owned. He was just delivering on the deal. My chest tightened, my breath short and shallow. Owned? Promised? My father had handed me over before I even knew what was happening? My mother exploded. You're lying. He would never. The man's grin widened. Wouldn't he? Think about it. All those men coming to your house. All those whispers. Why do you think he was so desperate all the time? He sold his soul to us years ago, and you were the down payment. I felt my stomach twist so violently I thought I might be sick. My father hadn't just betrayed me once. He had been planning it for years. Agent Miller slammed a hand against the bars, his voice sharp. Enough games. Who else knows about her? Who else is coming after her? The man leaned forward, lowering his voice. Everyone. And they won't stop. She's worth more than 20,000. She's worth millions to the right buyer. And trust me, they already know her face. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. My pulse hammered in my ears. My mother's arms wrapped around me, her voice breaking. No, no, no. Agent Miller's face hardened, but his eyes softened when they met mine. Emily, listen to me. We'll do everything in our power to protect you. But this means you're not just a witness. You're a target. And we need to move fast. The man in the suit leaned back on his bench, laughing softly, the sound chilling me to my core. Run all you want. Hide wherever you like. It won't matter. Sooner or later, they'll come knocking. And when they do, his eyes glittered as they locked on mine. You'll wish your daddy had finished the deal. I staggered back, while rising in my throat, my mother pulling me tighter against her chest. Agent Miller signaled to the guards. We're done here. Get him out of my sight. As the bars clanged shut behind us, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just my father's betrayal anymore. This was a war. And I was at the center of it. The ride to the safe house felt like slipping into another world. 2 black SUVs with tinted windows carried us through back roads and side streets, avoiding the main highways. Agent Miller sat in the front seat, talking quietly into his radio, while 2 other agents drove behind us. I stared out the window, but all I could see was my reflection, pale and wide-eyed. My mother squeezed my hand, though her own was trembling. Neither of us spoke. What could we say? Everything we thought we knew about my father, our family, our lives, it was shattered. When we finally pulled up, the safe house looked nothing like I expected. It wasn't some cold, concrete bunker or high-tech hideout like in the movies. It was an old farmhouse, paint peeling from the shutters, a porch swing creaking gently in the wind. This doesn't look very safe, I whispered. Agent Miller turned in his seat, his face serious but calm. That's the point. Nobody would think to look here. Sometimes hiding in plain sight works best. Inside, the house smelled faintly of dust and lemon cleaner, like someone had just prepared it for guests. The rooms were simple, wood floors, plain curtains, mismatched furniture, but it felt warmer than the police station, almost like a normal home. Almost. 2 agents stayed outside, keeping watch. Another moved through the house, checking windows and locks. Agent Miller gathered us in the kitchen. You'll stay here until we're sure it's safe to move you again. My team will rotate shifts to protect you. But understand this. Once word gets out that the broker was arrested, others in the network may come looking for you. My stomach twisted. How will they even know where I am? Miller met my eyes. They have ways, Emily. But so do we. The important thing is that you don't leave this property, not for anything. I nodded, though the words didn't make me feel safer. They made me feel trapped. The first night was the hardest. I lay awake in the small upstairs bedroom, listening to the wind rattle the shutters. Every creak in the old house made me jump. I kept seeing my father's face in my mind, his last look of regret, his hand reaching out toward me. Then, almost immediately, the man in the suit's grin would flash before me, and his words echoed in my head. You were already owned. Owned. The word made my skin crawl. Around midnight, I slipped out of bed and crept down the hallway. My mother was asleep on the couch downstairs, her arm draped over her eyes. I tiptoed past her, careful not to wake her, and stepped onto the porch. The air was cool, the night sky clear. For a moment, I just breathed, trying to remind myself I was free. But then I noticed it. The shadow of one of the agents pacing at the edge of the property, scanning the trees with a flashlight. Even here, I wasn't safe. The days blurred together. Breakfast with my mother at the kitchen table. Short conversations with the agents who guarded the house. Agent Miller dropping by with updates, though his updates never seemed good. "They're already sniffing around the city," he said one afternoon, standing by the window with his arms crossed. "Word is, your father owed more than we thought. And Emily, your name is out there now. That makes this more dangerous." I swallowed hard. "So what happens to me?" Miller's gaze softened. "We'll keep you safe. But you need to understand, Emily, you're not just a victim anymore. You're a witness. And that means you're part of this fight whether you want to be or not." His words were supposed to make me strong, but they felt like a heavy chain locking around my chest. Still, for a while, life at the farmhouse settled into a rhythm. It almost felt normal. My mother even managed to cook spaghetti one night, and we laughed when the sauce splattered across the old stove. For a moment, it felt like home again. But safety is fragile. And ours shattered the very next night. It started with a noise. A faint sound outside my window like gravel crunching under a boot. At first, I thought maybe it was one of the agents on patrol. But then I heard it again, closer this time. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Slowly, I crept to the window and peered out. The porch light cast long shadows across the yard. But just beyond its reach, something moved. A figure. Tall, dark, standing perfectly still at the tree line. Watching. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I stumbled backward, my hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. Downstairs, the front door creaked as if touched from the outside. And then, glass shattered. A rock came flying through the living room window, spraying shards across the floor. My mother screamed, agents shouted, guns were drawn. The farmhouse erupted into chaos. I dropped to the floor, my ears ringing, my whole body shaking. They had found us. The sound of shattering glass ripped through the farmhouse like thunder. I ducked low, my arms over my head as fragments scattered across the wooden floor. My mother pulled me toward her, her body shielding mine, her breathing fast and ragged. "Stay down," one of the agents barked, his gun already raised toward the broken window. Another agent kicked over the couch, using it as cover. The quiet farmhouse had transformed into a battlefield in seconds. Outside, voices shouted, low, commanding, unfamiliar. Shadows moved across the porch. The front door rattled violently, as though someone was testing the lock. "Secure the girl." Agent Miller's voice rang out from the hallway. He appeared, his face grim, his pistol steady in his hands. "They found us faster than we expected." My stomach dropped. Faster than expected. That meant this wasn't random. Someone had known exactly where we were. One of the agents grabbed my arm. "Basement. Now." But before we could move, the front door gave way with a splintering crack. It swung wide, slamming against the wall, and 3 figures stormed inside. They wore dark clothes, masks covering their faces, and each one carried a weapon. The agents fired first. The sound of gunfire exploded in the small house, deafening, shaking the walls. I screamed, covering my ears, as my mother dragged me behind the kitchen counter. Bullets tore through the furniture, glass shattered, wood splintered. I curled into myself, praying it would stop, praying I'd wake up and find it was all a nightmare. "Move her now," Agent Miller shouted. One of the masked men lunged forward, trying to cross the room, but Miller's shot stopped him cold. The man crumpled to the floor, his mask slipping to reveal a face twisted in anger. Another intruder shouted something in a language I didn't understand, then hurled a smoke canister into the room. A hiss filled the air, and a thick cloud of gray swallowed everything. My throat burned, my eyes watered. Hands grabbed me suddenly. Strong. Rough. For a split second I thought it was my mother. But when I turned through the smoke I saw the dark mask, the gloved hand clamped tight around my arm. "No!" I screamed, kicking, twisting, trying to break free. My mother lunged toward me, her voice raw with panic. "Let her go." But the man dragged me toward the door, his grip unyielding. I clawed at him, my nails raking against his sleeve, but it was useless. The world spun in chaos, shouts, gunfire, smoke. And then in the midst of it all, I was yanked across the threshold, out into the cold night air. I was being taken. The night air hit me like ice as the masked man dragged me across the porch. My lungs burned from the smoke, my throat raw from screaming. The farmhouse behind me erupted with chaos. Gunfire cracked, shouts echoed, and my mother's voice tore through the night like a knife. Emily! Emily! I clawed at the man's arm, my nails scraping against his gloves, but he was too strong. His stride was long, determined, pulling me across the yard toward the shadows of the trees. Let me go! I shrieked, kicking wildly. My heel connected with his shin and he stumbled, cursing. For a split second I thought I had a chance. I twisted, pulling with all my strength, but he only tightened his grip and yanked me harder. Behind us, the agents burst through the doorway, guns raised. Drop her now, one of them shouted. The man didn't stop. He dragged me faster, his head ducked low, weaving toward the tree line where another shadowy figure waited with a running car. Headlights flashed through the darkness, blinding me for a moment. Shoot him! I heard Agent Miller bark. But the man swung me around in front of him, using me as a shield. Do it and she dies, his muffled voice growled. I froze, my heart hammering. I could feel the pressure of the gun pressed against my side now, hidden beneath his arm. The agents hesitated. No one fired. The man kept backing toward the car. Gravel crunched beneath his boots. My mother appeared in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wild, screaming my name over and over again. And then it happened. A shot rang out, sharp, precise. The man jerked, his grip faltering for the first time. He groaned in pain, clutching his shoulder, and I tumbled to the ground. Run, Emily! Agent Miller shouted. My legs scrambled beneath me, adrenaline surging. I bolted toward the house, my lungs burning, but before I could reach the porch, another set of hands grabbed me from behind. This one was faster, stronger. A second masked man had been waiting in the shadows, and he threw me over his shoulder like I weighed nothing. I screamed, kicking, punching, clawing, but my fists only pounded against his back. The world bounced violently with each of his strides as he carried me toward the idling car. Emily! My mother's cry ripped through the night, followed by the rapid-fire pops of gunshots. The man carrying me ducked low, weaving between trees, then shoved me into the backseat of the car. The door slammed, and before I could scramble out, the vehicle lurched forward, tires spitting gravel. I pounded my fists against the window, sobbing, watching the farmhouse grow smaller behind me. The lights, the figures, my mother struggling against the agents trying to hold her back. It all blurred together through my tears. And then, in an instant, it was gone. The car sped down the dirt road, swallowing me in darkness. I pressed against the door, my chest heaving. Two men sat in the front, speaking in low voices, their language thick and unfamiliar. The one beside me kept his mask on, his eyes cold as he glanced at me. Please, I whispered, my voice breaking. Let me go. He didn't answer. I curled into the corner of the seat, trembling. My mind spun with 1,000 thoughts. Would my mother be okay? Would the agents find me? Where were they taking me? The drive stretched on forever. Trees blurred past the window, the headlights cutting tunnels through the night. Every bump in the road jolted me. Every turn made my stomach twist. At one point I tried to reach for the door handle, but the man beside me grabbed my wrist, twisting it until I cried out. Sit still, he growled. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I wanted to fight, but I couldn't stop shaking. My father's betrayal, the motel, the safe house. It all felt like it had led to this moment. And the man in the suit's words haunted me. You were already owned. After what felt like hours, the car slowed. My heart sank as I saw it. A warehouse, dark and looming against the night sky. Its windows shattered, its walls scarred with rust. The car rolled into a side entrance, headlights flickering off as the heavy door clanged shut behind us. The man beside me yanked me out, his grip like iron. The smell of oil and damp concrete filled the air. The warehouse was mostly empty, except for a single table under a hanging light, casting long shadows across the floor. Bring her, a voice ordered from the darkness. A figure stepped forward, tall and lean, dressed in a sharp black coat. His face was uncovered, his expression calm, almost casual, but his eyes were cold, calculating. He studied me for a long moment, then smiled faintly. So this is Emily Carter. I froze, my whole body trembling. How did he know my name? He stepped closer, his shoes echoing against the concrete. Your father tried to cheat us. He thought he could bargain his way out of what he owed. But you're worth far more than $20,000. My throat tightened, my knees weak. The masked man shoved me forward, and I stumbled to my knees in the circle of light. The man in the coat crouched down to my level, his face close enough that I could see the faint scar along his jaw. Welcome to your new life, Emily, he murmured. I've been waiting for you. My breath caught in my throat, my heart slamming against my ribs. And in that moment, I realized, my nightmare had only just begun. The man in the black coat circled me slowly, his shoes clicking against the concrete floor. I stayed on my knees, my chest heaving, my palms stinging from the fall. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But there was nowhere to go. The warehouse was a vast, empty cage, and I was trapped at its center. He crouched again, his scar catching the faint light. Do you know why you're here, Emily? His voice was calm, too calm, like he was speaking to a child. I shook my head, my lips trembling. Please. I just want to go home. He smiled faintly, but it wasn't kind. Home? Your home doesn't exist anymore. Not after what your father did. He made promises. He broke them. And now, his hand reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. You pay the price. I flinched back, my stomach twisting. His touch was cold, deliberate, like he wanted me to understand that I belonged to him now. Behind us, the masked men lingered by the car, whispering in low voices. One of them handed over a small black bag, heavy and clinking. The man in the coat set it on the table, never taking his eyes off me. $20,000, he said slowly, almost savoring the words. That's what your father thought you were worth. But I disagree. I think you're worth far more. And soon, the world will see just how valuable Emily Carter really is. The way he said my name made my skin crawl. I wanted to scream, to fight, to tell him he was wrong, but the words stuck in my throat. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear anything else. He stood, his shadow stretching long across the floor. Lock her up, he ordered the masked men. One of them stepped forward, grabbing my arm roughly and yanking me to my feet. I stumbled, my legs shaking, but he dragged me toward a side door. The corridor beyond was narrow and dark, the walls damp and cold. We reached a small room at the far end. A storage cell with a single mattress on the floor, no windows, and a steel door. The man shoved me inside, the smell of mildew choking me. The door clanged shut, the lock clicking into place. I collapsed onto the mattress, my body trembling so violently I could barely breathe. I buried my face in my hands, sobbing quietly, the sound swallowed by the walls. But then, just before I closed my eyes, I heard it. A voice. Faint, muffled, coming from the other side of the wall. Hello? Is someone there? My breath caught. I wasn't alone. The voice was faint, muffled by the thick wall, but it was there. I froze on the mattress, my tears drying instantly as adrenaline surged through me. For a moment I thought I was imagining it, some trick of my exhausted mind. Hello? Can anyone hear me? The voice whispered again, more urgent this time. I sat up, my heart hammering, and pressed my ear against the damp wall. Yes, I whispered back, my voice trembling. I hear you. There was a pause and then a shaky breath of relief. Oh, thank God. I thought I was the only one here. The sound of someone else, someone real, alive, trapped like me, sent a strange mix of fear and hope rushing through me. I pressed closer to the wall. Who are you? My name's Sarah, the voice answered softly. Sarah Mitchell. I've been here for, I don't even know how long. Days. Weeks maybe. Her words cracked, heavy with exhaustion. Who are you? Emily, I whispered. Saying my name felt like an act of defiance, like a reminder that I was still me. Emily Carter. Another pause. Then Sarah's voice trembled. Emily, you shouldn't be here. If they brought you, it means they're planning something. Her words made my stomach knot. What do you mean? Planning what? But before Sarah could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Heavy, deliberate. I scrambled back onto the mattress, curling into myself, pretending to be asleep. The steel door screeched open, and the man in the coat stepped inside. The room seemed smaller with him in it, his shadow spilling across the floor. He studied me for a long moment, his scar catching the dim light, his expression unreadable. "Comfortable?" he asked smoothly, as though he were offering hospitality instead of imprisonment. I stayed silent, my lips pressed together. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of an answer. He smiled faintly, as if my silence amused him. "Good. You'll need your strength. Tomorrow will be a very important day." My throat tightened. "What's happening tomorrow?" He leaned closer, his eyes gleaming with something cruel. "Tomorrow, the world begins to understand just how valuable you really are." Before I could ask anything else, he turned and left, the door clanging shut behind him. His footsteps faded, leaving only silence. I pressed my face into my hands, fighting the urge to cry again. Then Sarah's voice came through the wall, urgent and shaky. "Emily, listen to me. They're not keeping us alive out of kindness. They sell us. That's what they do. They keep us until someone pays, and then we disappear. Forever." Her words sank into me like ice. My father's betrayal replayed in my mind. The $20,000 deal, the broker, the man in the motel. This wasn't a random act. It was a business, a network, and I was just another piece of property to them. But why me? I whispered, pressing my hand flat against the wall. "Why not just take the money from my father and let me go?" Sarah hesitated, her voice breaking. "Because your father wasn't just in debt. He was involved. He worked with them. And when he failed to deliver what he promised, he gave them you instead." The words made me dizzy. I shook my head even though she couldn't see me. "No. He regretted it. I saw it in his eyes before." My voice faltered, the memory of his last moments stabbing through me. "Maybe he did regret it," Sarah said softly. "But regret doesn't erase what he did. And it doesn't change what's happening now." I curled into a ball on the mattress, rocking slightly. My mind screamed with questions. Who were these men? Who was the man in the coat? What did he mean about me being worth more than $20,000? But one question burned brightest. What will they do to me tomorrow? Hours passed, though they felt like days. The light bulb outside my cell flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to crawl along the floor. Sleep was impossible. Every creak, every distant clang of metal, sent a fresh wave of fear through me. At some point, Sarah whispered again, her voice weaker this time. "Emily, if we get a chance, any chance, we run. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. Just run." I swallowed hard, pressing my forehead against the cold wall. "Okay," I whispered back. "We'll run." But deep down, a terrifying thought rooted itself inside me. What if there would be no chance? What if this warehouse was the last place I would ever see? And then, just as I was drifting into a daze, the sound of footsteps returned. Louder this time. More than one set. The steel door swung open with a deafening screech, and two masked men stepped inside. Their eyes glinted above their masks, their hands gripping my arms before I could even move. "No, let go of me," I cried, thrashing against their grip. But they didn't answer. They dragged me from the cell, my heels scraping the floor, Sarah's panicked voice echoing faintly behind me. "Emily, don't let them take you." I struggled, screaming, kicking, but the men's hands were like iron. They pulled me down the corridor, toward the glow of the single hanging light over the table. And standing there waiting was the man in the coat. His expression calm, his eyes gleaming like a predator. "Good," he said softly as I was shoved into the circle of light. "You're ready." My stomach dropped. Ready for what? The light above the table buzzed softly, casting harsh shadows that made the warehouse feel even colder. I stood trembling in its glow, the masked men gripping my arms so tightly my skin burned. Across from me, the man in the coat watched with calm satisfaction, like everything was going exactly as he had planned. "You're stronger than I expected," he said smoothly, tilting his head. "Most children cry themselves silent by now. But you still fight." "I'm not a child," I spat, my voice shaking. He smirked. "No. You're a commodity. And tonight you'll prove your worth." My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stand tall. "What do you mean?" The man's eyes glinted. He gestured, and one of the masked men placed a sleek black laptop on the table. The screen glowed to life, its pale light washing over his face. He tapped a few keys and suddenly, a camera above the table blinked red. My stomach dropped. They were filming. He turned the screen toward me. Numbers scrolled rapidly, names I didn't recognize appearing beside them. "The world is watching," he said softly. "And they're bidding. Bidding." My knees almost gave out. He leaned closer, his voice low and deliberate. "You thought your father betrayed you for $20,000. But no, Emily, you're worth far more than that. Tonight, people from all over the world will compete for the privilege of owning you." The words hit me like a knife. My chest heaved, my vision blurred with tears. I shook my head violently. "No, I'm not for sale." The man in the coat straightened, his smile cold. "You already are." He nodded to the masked men, and they forced me into a metal chair, strapping my wrists to its arms. I struggled, pulling against the leather restraints until they cut into my skin, but it was useless. "Let me go," I screamed. "You can't do this." But he only raised a finger to his lips. "Shoo, the auction has begun." On the laptop screen, the numbers surged higher, bids flashing in real time. 10,000, 30,000, 50, 100. My entire body shook as I realized what was happening. That strangers I couldn't see were fighting over me like I was nothing more than property. Tears streaked my face. My voice broke. "Please, somebody help me." The man in the coat leaned down, his lips close to my ear, his words chilling. "No one is coming, Emily. Not tonight." And then from the shadows at the edge of the warehouse, a new voice cut through the air. "Let her go." The masked men stiffened. The man in the coat froze, his smile fading. Slowly he turned toward the darkness. My heart stopped. Someone else was here. The warehouse went silent. Even the buzzing light above the table seemed to fade. My breath caught in my throat, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The man in the coat slowly straightened, his sharp eyes scanning the shadows. "Who dares interrupt my business?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with steel. The masked men tightened their grips on their weapons, their bodies tense, waiting. I craned my neck, straining to see. My wrists throbbed against the leather straps, but I didn't dare move. From the far side of the warehouse, a figure stepped into the light. His face was half hidden beneath the brim of a cap, his jacket dusty from travel, but there was no mistaking the voice when he spoke again. I said, "Let her go." My stomach dropped. My mind scrambled. It was Agent Miller. The man in the coat chuckled, slow and mocking. "Ah, the loyal protector." He spread his hands as if welcoming him. "You're too late. The bidding has already begun." Miller's eyes flicked toward me, and for the briefest moment, I saw something there, a promise, a silent reassurance. Then his gaze hardened, locked back onto the man in the coat. "You're not selling her. Not tonight. Not ever." The man in the coat's smile widened, but his eyes turned icy. "And how do you plan to stop me? Alone against my men?" The masked men shifted, ready to strike. My pulse quickened. Miller looked outnumbered, hopelessly so, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his jacket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out his gun. He raised it, steady, aimed directly at the man in the coat. "Try me." The tension in the warehouse coiled tight, the air thick with the threat of violence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the man in the coat snapped his fingers. The masked men lunged forward. Gunfire erupted. The warehouse exploded with chaos, shouts, bullets ricocheting off metal, sparks flying in the dim light. I screamed, thrashing against my restraints, my chair rattling beneath me. Through the chaos, Miller's voice cut through. "Emily, hold on. I'm coming for you." I pulled against the straps with all my strength, my wrists burning, my tears blurring everything. The screen of the laptop flickered, bids climbing higher and higher as if the faceless audience was savoring the spectacle. But I barely saw it. All I could see was Miller, moving through the gunfire, fighting his way closer, step by step. And all I could hear was the man in the coat's calm, deadly voice shouting over the noise. "Don't let him reach her. Kill him." The warehouse roared with chaos. Bullets cracked through the air, echoing off the steel beams. Sparks rained as shots ricocheted off the concrete floor. My heart hammered so loud I could barely hear my own screams. Agent Miller dove behind a stack of crates, firing at the masked men who were closing in on him. His movements were sharp, practiced. He wasn't just surviving, he was pushing forward step by step toward me. The man in the coat stood back, watching calmly from the shadows, like the violence was a show he had orchestrated. His eyes gleamed with amusement, as though he already knew the ending. One masked man broke from the others, rushing Miller with a knife. Miller sidestepped, caught his wrist, and with a brutal twist dropped him to the ground. Another came from the left, firing. Miller rolled, his gun snapping up, and the attacker fell. I thrashed against my restraints, the leather straps digging into my skin. "Miller!" I cried, my voice raw. "Hurry!" He glanced at me just for a second and nodded. That single look gave me hope, like a spark in the darkness. But hope didn't last. From behind me, another masked man appeared, moving fast, too fast. Before Miller could react, the man yanked me upright, the chair tipping. His arm wrapped around my neck, cold metal pressed against my temple. I froze, my breath shallow, tears spilling down my face. "Drop your weapon," the man barked. His voice was muffled, but the threat in it was sharp. "Or she dies right here." Miller stopped in his tracks, his gun still raised, his chest rising and falling hard. His eyes locked on mine, then shifted to the barrel pressed against my head. The man in the coat finally stepped forward, clapping slowly, mockingly. "Ah, Agent Miller. So noble. So predictable. Always rushing to save the girl." Miller's jaw tightened, his finger twitching on the trigger. "Go ahead," the man in the coat said smoothly, tilting his head. "Shoot. Let's see who's faster, you or my man. I wonder how much the bidders will pay to watch her bleed on live stream." The laptop screen beside me flickered, numbers still climbing, the faceless audience feeding on my terror. Miller's gun wavered. His eyes burned with determination, but also fear of one wrong move. And in that frozen moment, with all eyes locked on him, the man in the coat gave the order that made my blood run cold. "End it." The masked man's grip tightened. The barrel dug into my temple, and Miller pulled the trigger. The gunshot split the air. For a single heartbeat, I thought it was over, that the barrel pressed to my head had fired. My body went rigid, my breath caught. But it wasn't me. The masked man behind me let out a strangled gasp. His grip slackened, the gun slipping from his hand. He crumpled to the floor, a dark stain spreading across his chest. Agent Miller lowered his weapon, smoke curling from the barrel. His eyes met mine, steady, fierce. "I told you, Emily. I'm not letting them take you." I collapsed back into the chair, sobbing with relief, though the leather straps still held me tight. The man in the coat didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled faintly as though impressed. "Well played, Agent. But do you really think one victory ends this? She is ours. She has always been ours." Miller leveled his gun at him. "Not anymore." Before the coat could reply, sirens wailed outside, loud, piercing, drawing closer. Red and blue lights flashed against the warehouse windows. Backup had arrived. The man in the coat's smile faded for the first time. He snapped his fingers and the remaining masked men scattered into the shadows, disappearing through side exits like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Miller rushed to me, pulling a knife from his belt to cut the straps. The leather gave way and I fell into his arms, trembling so hard I could barely stand. "You're safe now," he said firmly, though his eyes betrayed the weight of what we'd endured. "It's over." But as we turned toward the flashing lights outside, I glanced back. The man in the coat was gone, vanished into the darkness. His words echoed in my mind like poison. "She has always been ours." I shivered, knowing deep down this wasn't the end. Not truly. Still, as the agents swarmed the warehouse, wrapping me in a blanket, pulling my mother into my arms, I clung to the truth of this moment. I was alive. I was free for now. And I had learned something I would never forget. Sometimes the people who should protect you, the ones you trust most, can betray you. My father had sold me, reduced me to a price tag. But others, like Miller, proved that not everyone will abandon you. Some will fight for you, even when the odds are impossible. That night, as the flashing lights painted the sky, I realized my life would never be the same. I had been betrayed, broken, sold. But I had also survived. And survival is where strength begins. Folded hands, thank you for following my story. Sold for $20,000. My father's betrayal. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for more upcoming stories. And tell me, from which part of the country are you watching?